Good morning. Hope everyone's doing okay. I'm excited about this presentation because there's so much information here to share with you that I hope you take good notes, or as you know, we record these sessions and you can certainly go back and listen to it again. Some people I've been doing these sessions for the last several years, and I know that there are a number of you that have gone through these training sessions before. Some of you on your third or fourth time. It doesn't hurt. Repetition is good for you. You know, the more you hear it, maybe it will sink in. And one of the things that I've always talked about with people who work for me is when I say something, or when we talk about one of our principles that we believe in, I don't want someone that works for me or even a client to say just go do that. I want you to ask the question, why are you doing it this way? Why do you do it this way? Because I want you, and that's what I'm going to tell you today. I want you to ask that question to yourself or to me. You know, why are you doing it this way instead of that way? Because once I can explain to you our philosophy and why we do it this way, then it becomes your philosophy. And that's what I'm attempting to do here. I'm not trying to preach to you or to say to you, here are the things that you need to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want you to understand why we do things in a certain way. And everything that I've learned in this business, I've learned from the mistakes that I've made. I didn't learn it necessarily from reading a book on fundraising. I learned it from practical experiences. And that's the way you will learn too, is from practical experiences. And I've talked to you from the very beginning when we started talking about this business. I talked to you about going out and making mistakes. So anyway, again, we got a lot to cover this morning, and let's start with the first one is overcoming the fear factor. So that is the biggest issue, objective that we try to overcome in this business of fundraising, because there's a fear factor of going out and asking for money. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit, but I don't know if you can see this. This is a prime example of the fear factor. This is what I have gotten in about a week's time. These are mail solicitations. People are sending me solicitations in the mail for every organization you can imagine. Why do I call this a fear factor envelope? Because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for you to sit down and write a letter, or think you're going to write a letter that someone's going to read. And I've told you before, people don't read. They don't read anymore. And so, you know, what they do is they put together a letter and they send you a letter, and they want you to read the letter, and they want you to put a check in the mail and send it to them. Well, that's not the way you raise big money. That's not the way you raise big money. And so that's what I'm saying. There's a fear factor here. It's a lot easier to do this than to sit down with someone, look them in the eye, and ask them for a specific dollar amount. As I told you when we first started, we're going from general to specific, and we're going to get into a lot of specifics today. So let's look at the fear factor. And so, you know, if you take the 5 steps, which we're going to talk about today, my 5 steps of solicitation, what you do in a solicitation here, the 5 steps you follow. If you know those 5 steps, it certainly gives you a lot of confidence when you sit down and talk to someone. You know, effort. You got to have effort and persistence in making calls on your part, so that if you don't make calls, if you don't set a time, and you don't keep talking to people and following up and trying to set those appointments, there will be no results. So you've got to apply some effort here. You got to apply some effort if you think you're going to get any results. And A stands for attitude. Your attitude is everything in this business and fundraising. And so you got to have a positive attitude about going about, sitting down and talking to someone. This will help you overcome your fear factor. In other words, having confidence in yourself, having confidence that you know what you're doing, or you think you know what you're doing. And R stands for results. If you pick up the phone, you set the appointment, you use the 5 steps of solicitation with a positive attitude, then all your efforts will produce results. Trust me on this. If you don't trust me on anything else, if you set that appointment, if you use the 5 steps, you have a positive attitude, you're sitting down across the table from someone or across their desk, and you're asking them for a specific dollar amount, then it's going to produce results. Now, maybe not immediately, but it will produce results, and you will raise more money than you will writing that letter and sending that letter out and asking people to put a check in the mail and send it to you. Remember what we said before. If someone sends you a check for $100, if you ask them for a specific dollar amount, if you're sitting there across from the table and you ask them for a specific dollar amount, you get 5 times that amount. 5 times. Don't get too excited when someone sends you a check for $500, because if you talk to them in person and ask them for a specific dollar amount, you get 5 times that amount. Let's talk about my 5 steps in a solicitation. Before I go there, years ago, I developed this 5 steps years ago because I was about to make a solicitation. I've been in this business now for 34 years. And as I've told you before, I've made more mistakes than anyone. I decided that we had to have, I was going with someone, and I had this, I said, the right hand needs to know what the left hand's doing. And so I sat down and I developed these 5 steps. And these 5 steps have not changed in 30 years. 30 years we've been using the same ones. I had someone tell me that they were in a conference, a fundraising conference out in Los Angeles years ago, and they said, Jerry, they put your 5 steps up on the screen. He said there were 150 people there in that room, and he said they put your 5 steps up, and he said they gave you credit for it. And I said, well, did you tell them that? Did you give them my stuff? She said, no, I didn't tell them. That's what I'm saying. The 5 steps are unique, but it's so simple. It is so simple. You're going to say, this is easy. And so I want to walk you through each one of these 5 steps. The first step is small talk. Now, you say, well, that's pretty easy. It is easy, but it may be the hardest part. It may be one of the hardest steps there is small talk. Now, let me tell you, again, remember I made these mistakes. Well, I used to go into solicitations and I would go in and I would start talking about the purpose of the visit. I would jump into my presentation, and it didn't work very well. So now I never go in and make a solicitation. I never go in and make a solicitation without having small talk to begin with. So you're going to in your career, you're going to walk in and there's going to be some people that are bottom line people, and I understand that, and some people want to talk. Some people want to talk. It certainly makes it a lot easier for you to have that small talk conversation. I mean, now if I walk into a room, I'm sort of looking around the room or the office, and if I see golf clubs over in the corner, I would say, do you play golf? How's your golf game? I'm going to have some small talk, whatever it is. Now, let's say that you're a development officer of a school. I would be looking for, if this is a parent, I would be trying to determine what grades are his children in. And grades, are they in the 4th grade or the 6th grade? I would know their names. And I would say to John, I just wanted to say, how are your children doing in school? How's Mary doing in the 4th grade? And how's Jim doing in the 6th grade? I'm going to have some small talk to begin this conversation. And it's really, really important. I can't stress to you how important it is that you have small talk. Go into the purpose of the meeting. When I go into a meeting, typically there are 2 people that go with me. I'm going with the head of school. I'm going with the president of the university. I'm going with whomever I go with. And years ago, I used to have them take step number 2 and tell the purpose of the visit. I found out though, they let small talk go on forever and ever and ever and ever. And so I take step number 2. And that's your role as a development person. You take step number 2, because when there's a break in the conversation, in step number 1, I'm going to jump in and say, hey, Jim, John, I want to thank you for allowing us an opportunity to sit down and visit with you about the campaign that we're involved in right now. I've got a proposal that I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and certainly consider it. Now, what I just said, that last phrase I use is very important. I didn't used to use that, but now I do. And why do you think I say that? John, Jim, thank you for allowing us an opportunity to visit with you. I've got a proposal that I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and certainly consider it. And remember, I've got my proposal in my hand. I never put my proposal down on the table, right? We talked about this, I think, before. If we don't, we're talking about it for the first time. If I put the proposal down on the table, the kitchen table, the desk, the prospect tends to pick it up and read it. open it up and read it. And when they open it up and start reading it, you lose eye contact. And when you lose eye contact, it's all over. And so I hold on to it. I made that mistake, right? I put the proposal down on the table. I remember I'm in a big conference room and a round conference table. And the person I'm making a presentation to, I put the proposal down, and son of a gun, this person had crawled halfway across the table to get that proposal. So I don't do it anymore. I leave it. I hold on to it. But here's the point I want to make. There are a couple of points in my 5 steps where I'm taking pressure off of people, taking pressure off. Remember this, you don't put pressure on people. I've had people say to me, Jerry, well, you've been doing this a long time, so I know that you know what the pressure points are and how you can make people give. I know I don't know how to do that. But when I say to individuals, I've got a proposal, I want to leave with you, I want you to read it, review it, and consider it, I'm taking pressure off of them. I'm telling them what? I'm telling them I'm not expecting a decision today. I'm not expecting a decision today. I didn't used to do this. And when I didn't used to do it, then when I got to step number 3, they didn't listen to step number 3. They didn't listen to that because they were concerned about the fact that this guy's in here and he's going to ask me for money and I don't know what I'm going to tell him. So I'm taking pressure off of people in step number 2 by saying, I've got a proposal I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and consider it. Step number 3 is telling the story. Telling the story. That's who, when I bring somebody with me, either a board member, a faculty member, a head of school, the president, whomever I bring with me, that's their role. That's their role. They tell the story. And I tell people, I said, okay, I'm not going to script you. I do go over my 5 steps with an individual. Of course, I tell them. I said, here's your role. Your role is to tell the story. Now you have to tell the story with passion and enthusiasm. That's the only thing you have to tell. You have to tell with passion and enthusiasm. And I had a college president one time tell me, he said, well, Jerry, I can't really be enthusiastic. I said, well, fake it till you can get it, because it's too important. I mean, if you go in and you're not enthusiastic and you're not passionate about your story, why would anybody want to give to you? Why would anybody want to give to you? They give you any money. And so I tell people, I said, I'm not going to script you. Sometimes, though, I have to give the individual telling the story a few bullet points. I don't say, okay, here's a script, memorize this script. I don't do that. Here's a few bullet points I'd like you to cover. Now, we also like to use storyboards. And some of these storyboards are pretty large. And if it's a project we're doing and we've got a picture of the building or we've got the layout, whatever it is, we have 2 or 3 storyboards that this person can use in telling the story. And that helps them a lot when they're telling the story, to be able to talk from the pictures or the storyboards. It makes a big difference. And so I say, okay, tell the story. Don't take longer than 10 minutes to tell the story. Use your elevator speech. Your elevator speech is important when telling the story. People don't want to hear all the details about what it is you're trying to raise money for. And so that the individual tells a story. And, then step number 4 is making the ask. Now, typically, when I'll go out with someone, and I've made several solicitations with them, they know that when they stop telling the story, they end, I pick it up. Now it doesn't hurt, especially when you're out with someone for the first time, for that individual telling the story to say, I'd like for Jerry to to talk to you more specifically about the campaign and our request for you, and so I pick it up. But typically that doesn't happen. It's a real easy transition from telling the story to making the ask. Now, when I get there to make the ask, again, I would say, I'm trying to build into this. I don't jump into making the ask. I want to lead into that. And I'll talk about the fact that the board's 100%. If it's a school, the faculty and staff's 100% in commitment to the campaign. We've raised X number of dollars towards our goal of X, whatever that may be. I'm trying to show some success. I'm trying to show success before I make the ask. That's important. And then I also will follow back up with, John, Mary, I've got a proposal. As I said earlier, I've got a proposal I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and certainly consider it. I'd like for you to consider a gift of $30,000 payable in equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. And I stop right there. Stop. And I wait for an answer. I wait for it. This is important. I wait for an answer. Again, let me just say, John and Mary, I want you to please consider a gift of $30,000 payable equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. I stop and wait for an answer. What do you think the answer I get? I mean, I've done thousands of these solicitations. What is the answer you think I'm going to get? The answer typically is, Jerry, we'll think about this. We'll consider it. We need to talk amongst ourselves. We'll pray about it. Whatever they say, I come back with, here's another point. I told you there are 2 points here where I take pressure off of people. Here's another point. When they give me some answer, I don't care what the answer is. If they laugh, if whatever point they give me, I say, remember this, any amount you give is certainly going to be appreciated. Any amount you give is certainly going to be appreciated. That's what I do. But the key point here in number 4 is once you make the ask, no one speaks. That's called the silent phase. That's the silent phase. You wait for an answer. Now, there have been times where, it seems like we've had a silent phase for 5 minutes. It's never been anywhere close to that long, but some people will sit there and not say anything. And I'm not saying anything, but you've got to train the person that goes with you that they can't say anything either. We're waiting for you've asked the question. You got to wait for an answer. Here's what a lot of development officers will do, and you may be one of them. John and Mary, I'd like you to consider a gift of $30,000 payable equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. But if you can't do that, maybe you could do 20,000, or if that's too much for you, maybe 10 or 5 or 10,000. I mean, you never stop long enough to let them answer your question. Remember that stop and wait for an answer. Then step number 5, John and Mary, again, thank you for allowing us an opportunity to sit down and visit you today about our proposal. I'd like to ask if I can follow up with you in a week to 10 days. 99% of the people, 99.9% of the people say yes. So that's my 5 steps. But let me go back to a couple of things. Let's go back to making the ask. When I make the ask, and someone says to me, we will think about that. Matter of fact, we knew you were coming to make an ask, and you asked for 30,000. We can't do 30, but we've talked about 25. Now, my response is, do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card for that amount today? Do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card for that amount today? Now, I found out over the years, that's about 50-50. 50% of people say, yeah, I feel comfortable signing a pledge card. Or 50% said, no, I don't feel comfortable. We need to spend a little more time talking about it and asking about it. The point is that if you got to close here, that's what this business is about, closing. Remember, C-L-O-S-E, close. And if they give you any indication that they're ready to make a gift, then you need to close. Now, I'm going to tell you a story in just a minute, but I remember going to a conference. I think I was in New York or somewhere, and I remember hearing this lady who wrote a book on making the ask. She wrote a book, and so I'm sitting there listening to her, and she said that she had asked this gentleman for $50,000, and he said, "I can't do 50, but I can do 25." And she said to him, "Well, now wait a minute. I want you to think about that 50,000 I've asked you for, and I'm going to call you back next week because I really want you to consider the 50,000, not the 25." And I said to myself, my mother taught me a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush. If someone tells me I can't do the 30,000 you asked me for, or the 50,000 you asked me for, but I can do 25, then I'm going to pull out my pledge card. I'm going to pull out my pledge card, and I'm going to get that signed right now, and I'm going to move on to the next prospect. So I don't know how to do what she's talking about. And that's what I'm telling you, that if they give you any indication, if they say, yeah, we can't do that, we can do this, pull out the pledge card and get them to sign the pledge card. Now, I'll tell you a story. I'm calling on a gentleman who's chairman of the campaign of the university we work with. The VP for development and I are having breakfast with this gentleman. So he gave us a range in the feasibility study. He gave us a range of 50,000 to 100,000, but we knew he had a lot more capability than that. So we decided that we're going to ask him for $250,000. That was a little bit of a stretch from what he gave us, but we knew he was capable of that. So we go through my 5 steps. We get to the ask, and I make the ask. The VP for development, he tells the story. I make the ask, and I said, I'd like for you to consider a gift of $250,000, payable equal amounts of $50,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. Then we stop and we wait for an answer. And there was a little bit of a dead silence in the room. And then he said, let me ask you a question. He said, how many people that you've solicited so far have made a gift of $250,000 or more? And I said, well, we've got 4, you're one of 4 co-chairs. And every one of the co-chairs we have solicited to date have made a gift of over $250,000. I said, okay. And then still there was a little bit of a hesitation. And he said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the 250,000, but I'm going to do more. Now, what would you say? I ask this question in every seminar I go into, and you'd be surprised at the answers I get when I say, what would you say? He said to me, I'm going to do the 250,000, but I'm going to do more. Now, this is not brain surgery. This is pretty simple. And so, I mean, to yourself, you can say, you think about what you would say if you were in that situation. I just said, how much more? Right? That's a simple response to that question. How much more? He said, $1 million. Now, what do I do? What do I do? He said $1 million. I just told you what I would do, right? I told you. I'll pull out my pledge card, right? I've got my pledge card in my pocket. I carry my pledge card with me everywhere I go, in my left-hand coat pocket, because I'm right-handed and it's easy to pull that pledge card out. I said, do you feel comfortable in signing a pledge card for that amount this morning? He sort of laughed a little bit, snickered, because I don't think he thought I was going to try to close that quick. And he said, yeah. I put the proposal in front of him. I had him sign it. And within an hour, the VP of development and I walked out of that restaurant with $1 million pledge card signed. That's what you have to do. I'm not saying that you're going to be prepared to do that the first time you make a solicitation, but you better be prepared for things that people say to you. Let's say, for instance, that I make the ask for this couple of $30,000, and they say to me, or they say to you, where did you get that amount? Where'd you get that dollar amount? What are you going to say? You better be prepared. There are a few questions that people will ask you. Rarely do they make that ask. In all the years I've done this, of course I've had that asked to me. And here's what I do. I come back and say to those people, hey, John, Mary, for us to reach our goal, we've got to challenge people to do all they can do, knowing that anything you do is going to be appreciated. That seems to satisfy them with that answer. If it doesn't, you come back with, well, we did some research, that we have ways to do research on gift capability, not on net worth. And we felt that you were capable of making that kind of an ask. I typically never get to that point. When I say that first part, that seems to satisfy them. Now, let me go back to this point too. When I'm going in to ask someone for a large gift, and I don't have the information from a feasibility study, but I know that they have capability. And the hardest part of this business is coming up with the right ask amount. And I've talked to development officers, for years. They don't know how to make the ask. But here's what I do. If I'm going into someone and I don't know exactly what the right ask amount is, but I know they're capable, and I'm asking for a large gift, $100,000, let's say, then I'll use that phrase I just said before. Before I make the ask, I will say, John and Mary, for us to reach our goal, we're going to have to challenge everyone to do all they can do, knowing that anything you do is certainly going to be appreciated. And I'd like for you and your family to consider a gift of $100,000 payable in equal amounts of $25,000 a year, payable over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. I always preface that with, if I'm not sure about the ask amount. Listen, I'm throwing a lot at you here, but I'm telling you, people that use the 5 steps believe in it, they follow it, and it works. It works. So, I'm sorry I don't have an opportunity to see you face to face or talk to you. So I'm sure you might have some questions, and if you do, I'll be glad to try to answer those. But again, we're going to talk about the follow-up in a few minutes when we get to that phase of it. Let's talk about the 5 steps using a preliminary meeting. So now we're not going in for a solicitation. We're going in for a preliminary meeting or a cultivation meeting. Now, what do we do when we go into a preliminary cultivation meeting? Remember, I've talked about this before. If we're going to ask this gentleman for $25,000 or his family for $25,000 when we make a solicitation, then I have that $25,000 in mind when I go in and do a preliminary cultivation meeting. I'm trying to confirm that dollar amount as the right dollar amount. Now, I don't ask him that, but I'm looking at his surroundings. I'm listening to him, what he tells me about whatever, and I'm trying to come out of that meeting and I'm trying to determine, yes, he can do that $25,000. But I use the 5 steps in a preliminary meeting too. So I go through the small talk. I talk about the step number 2 is telling the purpose of the meeting. I'm here to talk to you about our campaign and where we are, and exciting things that are going on at our organization. Then you tell the story, and you tell the story with, I said it before, I've been with development officers before where they may have 3 or 4 projects in the scope of their campaign, and they began to talk about all of them in detail. And I'm telling you, people don't want to hear all that. Develop your elevator speech that you can talk about your projects in a quick time, and that's what you do when you're talking about the campaign itself and telling the story. And so, then step number 4, where I said you're gonna make the ask. Here, what you're doing is you're asking the individual, I'd like to ask your permission to bring a proposal back to you for your consideration. That's step number 4. I'm not asking for a gift. I'm asking permission to bring a proposal back. I use that wording every time, and I've been doing this for 30 years, using those words. I'd like to ask your permission to bring a proposal back to you for your consideration. 99.9% of the people say yes. That doesn't mean they're going to give to you, but they will accept a proposal. 5 steps using a breakfast, lunch, or dinner meeting. First of all, I don't like solicitations at breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But for some reason, a lot of development officers want to have all their meetings at breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Whatever happened to a meeting in their home? Whatever happened to a meeting in their office? They tend to think that they got to have lunch or breakfast or dinner with these people. So let's say we're going into a lunch meeting and you have this prospect with you and you're going to make a solicitation. So you go into the lunch meeting. Now, here's what I found out. Again, making mistakes early on in my career, I found out this didn't work. So when you sit down and you've got someone with you that's going to be telling the story, and you're seeing this individual, you're meeting this individual, he or she, at a lunch meeting. So you do the small talk. Everybody's doing the small talk, right? Then step number 2, you wait till after the small talk, and the waiter comes over. The waiter comes over, and our waitress, and you give them your order. Everyone gives them their lunch order, and they leave. Then you start step number 2. And let me tell you, why we're here. You go through step number 2, you go through step number 3, you go through step number 4. You do 2, 3, and 4 before your lunch is served. They bring lunch to you, and then you can certainly continue the conversation. But when lunch is over or about to be over, then you ask the number 5 question about follow-up. Can I follow up with you in a week to 10 days? That's the only way lunch or dinner or breakfast meetings work. Otherwise, you go into a lunch or dinner meeting and breakfast meeting, and what happens? You sit there, you have small talk. Small talk goes on forever and ever and ever. You have somebody come in and they place the order, and then you're still having small talk. They bring lunch back to you, and you sit there and you eat lunch, and then you got 10 minutes 10 minutes to make your presentation. Doesn't work. I'm trying to tell you, this is the way you do that. As soon as after you place the order, after you place your order for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you start on step number 2. Let's talk about this, how to follow up. This seems to be a pretty hard thing for people to do. I mean, I can teach a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old how to make an ask. I can teach them how to do that. But this follow-up seems to be a little bit difficult for people. And, what I said was, can I follow up with you in a week or 10 days? So I get on the phone. Well, let's talk about the follow-up first of all. You send handwritten notes, not written notes. I like a handwritten note, not a form letter. You're going to call them 7 to 10 days following the solicitation. You're going to, but I'm going to talk about step number 3 in just a minute. After about, and here's what I do. I've got this, when I do my follow-up call, let me just stop right there and talk about this. I'm going to call and I'm going to say, John, this is Jerry. I just wanted to follow up on the presentation that we made to you and Mary on such a date, whatever it was. And I wanted to ask you if you had any comments, concerns, on the proposal we presented. Most people say no, we haven't read it yet. We haven't read the proposal yet. Then I say, can I follow up with you again in a week? I don't say 7 to 10 days. I'm now shortening my time between the first time I call them and the second time I call them. So I ask permission to follow up with them again. After 5 follow-up calls, after I'm following up with them 5 times, you need to reduce the ask amount. What does it say when you call 5 times and they don't give you an answer? It says that you have asked for too much money. You've asked for too much money. And so you got to reduce the ask amount by at least 50%. So if I said to you, hey, John, we asked you for $30,000. And I always use this comment. We'd really like for you and your family to be part of the campaign. We'd really like for you to be part of this campaign. And we asked you for 30, but would you consider 15,000? I reduce it by 50%. If they say, no, we can't do that, I'll reduce it again by 50%. Would you consider a gift of 7,000? If they commit over the phone, here's a good point. If they commit over the phone, yes, I think we can do the $7,000. Can I fill out a pledge card for you now? Can I fill out a pledge card for you now? Some people will say yes. And I fill out the pledge card. I'll just say, okay. And when I get the pledge card and they give me an indication, I said, I'll send you a copy of the pledge card. And because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to close here. I'm trying to close. So I fill out the pledge card where it has the signature of the individual. I just said per phone conversation with Jerry on 10/10/24. I write that in. And then I'm going to send them a copy of the pledge card, and I'm going to send them a letter with that pledge card saying, John, Mary, thank you for a pledge of $7,000 you made over the phone to me on such a date. If this is not correct, please let me know. And so that's how I handle the fact that in case there's a misunderstanding or they didn't hear me or I didn't hear them. But let me tell you, we have found that getting pledge cards signed over the phone, there's not any greater default rate on those than on any other when you get a pledge signed in person. So again, you got to be persistent, and you don't take anybody off your list. If they don't commit in 5 follow-up calls and reducing the ask amount doesn't work, you put them on the back burner and come back later. What you do typically is you put them in your follow-up list or your list that you're going to use at the end of the campaign, where you're going to do a direct mail appeal, and you put them in that direct mail appeal. So nobody's taken completely off the list because they don't give you enough. But I'll tell you this: if you ever go into a campaign, if you've been into a campaign, you will find that you will finish the campaign. There will people that will never give you an answer. They will never tell you yes and never tell you no. I've thought about that a lot. What does that say about someone? I'm not sure, but they won't give. I wish someone would tell me, no, Jerry, I cannot give, or I'm not giving because I don't believe in the project, or I don't believe in the campaign, or I don't believe in the organization. Fine, thank you very much. I'd much rather someone say no to me than to put me on ignore and never commit to me. but they don't do that. You know, they say, no, I can move on. I don't have to worry about following up with them 4 or 5 times. If someone says to you, no, I can't do that. Now, this is rare. People don't tend to say no, but I use this iPad in the follow-up also. Let's just say, you know, I don't know that we can do that. I've called them 3 or 4 times. Then this is an iPad, and I remember by using the letters IPAT. And this is something came up. Jerry Panis, who passed away several years ago, I think he was the greatest. He created this. And so I would say to John, I follow up with him, and he says, no, I don't think I can give to you right now or at this time. And I'd say, John, can I ask you a question? I don't say, John, can I ask you 4 questions? I say, John, can I ask you a question? The reason you can't give now is it have anything to do with the organization or the institution? No. And he says, no, not about that. I said, you know, we asked you for a specific project. I mean, is it the project? Is it the project that you don't feel comfortable in supporting? No, I like the project you presented to me. Well, is it the amount we asked for? And he says, no, it's not the amount. The amount you gave is probably within our range. Is it the timing? And he said, yes, it's the timing. He said, I've got 2 other pledges that I'm making, and I won't pay off my last pledge for 18 months. And this is a true story. This is what Jerry Panis tells in his book. He tells this story, and he says, no, I can't. I've got to pay off this pledge, and it'll be 18 months before I pay it off. Jerry Panis says, what's he doing? Jerry Panis says, I'm trying to close. He says to himself, I've got to close. He said, John, you know, you could sign a pledge card today and start your pledge to this campaign after you complete your last pledge on that campaign you're in now after 18 months. So, you know, 19 months out, you can start this pledge. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. So the story Jerry tells is the guy then signs a pledge for $100,000. Again, it's all in knowing what to do, and it's all in understanding what steps you need to take, and it's all in about asking questions. And I've said it before, and I'll say it to you again: development officers don't ask enough questions. So remember, if you're on a follow-up call, or someone says to you, "No, I can't do that. I'm not sure I can do what you asked me for. Can I ask you a question? Is it the organization? Is that the reason you're not willing to give? Is it the project? Is it the amount? Is it the timing?" You take those one at a time, and you ask those questions, and you will find out. You will find out what the reason is, the reason they can't give. And maybe, again, maybe you can move them in a direction of making a pledge. So anyway, I think it's really good to understand that. And remember, PAT, to help you, I've created confidence cards. I don't call them cheat cards. I call them confidence cards. And let me just tell you, I put these cards together. I'm going to send each one of you a set of my confidence cards. And they're laminated cards. And so, you know, number 1, the preliminary discovery meeting, we talked about that before. You know, again, one of the points that you want to ask in step number 4, I'd like to ask your permission to bring you a proposal for your consideration. So I'm laying it all out for you. All you have to do is take my confidence cards and memorize them. Now, you know, you may not like what I say, and that's fine, but write your own and memorize what you're going to say. So know what you're saying every step of the way. Don't go in there and shoot from the hip. So then my 5 steps, we've gone over that. We already know that. Memorize those 5 steps. Know what the 5 steps are in a solicitation. I have a proposal I'd like to leave with you. I'd like you to read it, review it, and consider it. Remember, that's in step number 2. Step number 2, I have a proposal I'd like to leave with you. I'd like for you to read it and review it and consider it. Step number 4 is the solicitation. First name, I'd like to ask you to consider a pledge of X amount, payable equal amounts over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. Let me stop right here and tell you, why do I break it out in equal amounts? Most people don't do that. 90% of development officers do not do that. They're asking for a gift of, we'd like you to consider a gift of $50,000 payable over a 5-year period of time. They might say that. I was in remember, everything I've learned, I learned from mistakes. So I was in a solicitation. I was in Memphis, Tennessee with a school. And so the president of the school and I were making this solicitation on this lady. And it's funny how you remember this. This is 20 years ago. And I asked her for $18,000 payable over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. So she calls the president up later on that day. And she said, when he asked me for $18,000, I said to myself, no way I can do that. But when I read the proposal, it said in equal amounts of $6,000 per year over the next 3 years. I can do that. So see, the light goes off. The light goes on, you know. And I said, okay, from now on, I'm going to break the pledge out. I don't care what it is. If it's $100,000 over the next 3 years, I'm going to break it out. I'm going to say, I'd like you to consider a gift of $100,000, payable equal amounts of $33,000 per year over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. I'm breaking the dollar amount out, even if it may not be an equal number. So again, that's a really important point to make sure people understand exactly what you're asking them to do. All right, you wait for an answer. Remember that? After the answer, tell them any amount you give to the campaign will be appreciated. I've already talked about this. You got it. You got it on your confidence card. If the answer to that is possible, do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card today? You feel comfortable signing a pledge card today? Follow-up script. Hello, John. Just wanted to follow up on the proposal we presented to you on behalf of the organization. I'm calling to see if you have any comments, questions, or concerns related to the proposal. I use that verbiage. I use that words every time. That's the same words I use every time. I don't call John, hey, have you made a decision yet? I'm a little bit more indirect. And by indirect, I'm saying, call and see if you have any comments, questions, or concerns related to the proposal I presented to you and Mary, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, whatever it may be. That's the follow-up script I use. That took a long time to go through that, but it's important to do that. Now, let me just, I'm going to try to get through this too very quickly, but saying thank you is so important. So important. You got to say thank you. Learn how to say thank you. Learn how to say thank you a number of times in different ways. People don't say thank you. So let me just show you that it's the most important phase you can learn as a fundraiser. And you got to thank people 48 to 72 hours after they make a gift or pledge. 48 to 72 hours. I know this one organization I'm working with now where they currently send out a thank you note a month later. Well, listen, if I make a gift to your organization, you send me a solicitation or you solicit me and I'll send you a gift or I'll get check. And you wait for 30 days to send me a thank you note, don't bother. Don't bother. I'm not giving to you again. Remember, I said this early, there's 1.4 million nonprofit organizations out there. They're growing by 30 to 40,000 per year. You better start doing everything you can to thank people and separate you and your organization from all these other people. And one of the ways you can do that is saying thank you. Now, there's an old saying that says you thank a donor 7 times in 7 different ways before asking for a gift. I had one development officer years ago. I made this statement. I said, you got to thank people 7 times before you ask them for another gift. He said, Jerry, he said, I saw this lady asked for a gift. I went up to her and I thanked her 7 times. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I said, that's not exactly what I had in mind. What are different ways? What are different ways? You have the board to say thank you. You have a board member to pick up the phone and call someone and leave them typically they don't get them on the phone, but they leave them a message. And that's just as important. Leave them a message on their answer machine. Hey, I'm John Smith. I'm a member of a board of some sort. I know you made a gift, and I want to thank you on behalf of the board. That's really important. Handwritten note is the best way to convey sincerity. Put the gift acknowledgement policies in writing so everyone knows what the policy is, who's going to thank these people, and you cannot thank people enough. So we got 5 people saying thank you letters. So what? I don't care. You have 10 people, because it doesn't happen. If you have 6 people sending thank you notes out, they're going to remember your organization. They're going to remember you. So don't just take this for granted. Thank you is really, really important if you want to build a relationship and you want them to give to you again. And ensure that every donor's thank, no matter the size of the gift. You never know when someone's got some ability to give you a large gift and they're testing you. They give you a small gift to see what you do. And so if you do that every 48 to 72 hours, you have to send them a handwritten note, all that. And so use the word impact when you're sending a thank you note. Hey, John and Mary, I want to thank you for the impact your gift is making on our organization. Impact is a key word. And keep donors up to date on if they have an endowment, let them know annually what that endowment's doing, how much interest it's made, what's it doing in terms of if it's a scholarship endowment. And always, did I say that again? Always include a PS on your written thank you letter. If you do a written thank you letter, and that's okay, always put a PS. Why? Because they're only going to read the PS. Remember, I told you, they don't read letters. They're not reading the letter. They don't read the PS. And so what do you put in the PS? It can be the first line of the letter. John, Mary, I want to thank you for the impact your gift is made on our organization. They read that. That's important. Use the PS. And I give to every organization I work with, every organization. And so I'm always curious and I do that at the end of the year. I'm always curious when I get a thank you letter back, and they don't have a PS on it, and that just really bothers me. That I've failed them in trying to teach them how important a PS is. PS is so important. Now I'll tell you another thing. You send these written thank you letters out. Be sure you call a person by the name you know them. So I'm Jerry F. Smith, and so you know me as Jerry. Don't send me a letter that says Mr. Smith. That's not personal at all. I remember when I was at Auburn, and I would write thank you notes, PSs every Sunday afternoon when I was writing those, and I'd do a lot of them. And if it came back, I would not scratch out Mr. Smith and write Jerry on there. I'd send the letter back and have it retyped. Now, if you know him as Bubba, say, dear Bubba, but be personal, take a little bit more time and do this right. It goes a long, long way when you do that. This is the last slide. I want to tell you real quick. Boards focus on the cost and not the end result. And I don't know why I got this in this slide, but we did a feasibility study for this organization, and we tested about $3.3 million. We interviewed 152 individuals. We came back with a range. Remember, we asked for a range in the feasibility study. Can you give us a range where your possible gift may fall from low to high? Consider it can be done over a 3-year period of time. The low number was 683,000. The high number was 1.4 million. 1.4 million. We did it. We recommended a working goal of $1 million for the campaign. Based on what we gave them as a cost of the campaign, it was about 6 cents per dollar raised. 6 cents per dollar raised. When I was at Auburn, my cost was 12 cents on the dollar. You need to know too. You need to know what's your cost of raising a dollar. But when we presented that proposal to the board, it amounted, based on our cost of doing the campaign, it was 6 cents on the dollar. They came back and said we were too expensive. They said we can do this on our own. They raised $300,000 on their own. So again, just a point I want to make. Sometimes boards get too hung up on the cost and not focusing on the end result. So I've covered a lot of ground today. I hope that you will go back and listen to this one again. This is probably one of the most important sessions I do, where I go over those 5 steps, prepare you for how to make that ask. I'm going to send you my confidence cards, and they will be laminated. And I've had people that they put the card in their pocket, and they pull out those notes and review them before they go in. So again, I think that it's important that you do that. I don't know if there's any questions. Well, it looks like we had a great session here today. A lot of people on here. Hope you got something out of this. All right. Well, thank you all for being with me, and I appreciate it. And I will hopefully see you on the next session.
Hey, Jerry,
right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Dan Gregg. I've been working with Jerry for the last 15 years, and I took notes today like I was a rookie. This is really good stuff. And thank you, Jerry, for continuing to teach us about how to close, how to go through this. And they're just golden nuggets. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. All right. Well, listen, y'all have a great week, and you know, you'll be getting my confidence cards in the mail. And when you get them, as I said, read them, memorize them, and use my words. And if you don't like my words, use your own words. But I think that you got to have something that you're going to say over and over and over and over again, because it gives you the confidence. It eliminates that fear. Remember we talked about it, eliminates the fear factor. All right. Have a good day. Talk to you later.
Jerry.
Thanks,
Thank
Jerry.
you. All right. Bye-bye.